Hello, everyone. We've been talking about Beyond the Bot on July 9th for a few days, and I'm here. First of all, I've been doing this podcast style one way conversational kind of videos for some time on my LinkedIn and the previous webinar as well. So I do think that in a little bit of time, you all are going to start thinking I'm more of a podcaster than I am a GTM AI, RevOps expert, or a product developer, or an entrepreneur, or someone who leads digital enablement. But the true thing is, I like to have these discussions in this particular manner because it allows me to have a very direct connection with the topic at hand and I get to explore it in much more depth. I promise you that in few of the future videos where I'm going to be sitting down and talking about these things, I am going to have a few other people join me and they would cover a few more things than this beyond the bot and the prerequisites for AI enablement. Now, the last time we were here, we were talking about how you have to actually have everything ready before AI comes in. But another great thing to discuss is always going to be how enterprise AI enablement is halted, not only just halted, but slowed down and then usually destroyed by a system, process, and governance that does not actually help. My whole concept here is that if you've got anything in the world that needs to flourish, it needs the right environment to flourish. AI has its own prerequisites, and you've got to live by those prerequisites. Now, what do I mean by that? So, let's say you've got three to four different systems. Let's be precise. You've got five systems. One of them is a CRM. One of them is a billing system. One of them is an ERP. One of them is a Google Ads platform. And one of them is, let's say, your internal project management tool. Now you've got five systems, and all those systems report different numbers. And those numbers have to come together for any particular AI system to create a strategy for you. A very simple example here. Let's say you've got to create a GTM strategy. If you have to have a GTM strategy, you would have to require your systems to report numbers to your AI system. How does that work? So let's say you have a particular ad campaign running, and that ad campaign is feeding people into your CRM. And then you need your CRM to be connected to a GTM system that is AI enabled, that reaches out to those prospects and tries to do that conversion bridge. Now, that conversion bridge needs to happen, but how does it happen perfectly? There are multiple codependent systems. You have to have certain data foundation, system and systematic foundation, and governance foundation before your AI GTM can run with that. Let's take a step further in this. I'm one of the prospects that goes through that ad, submits a form, but I've already been one of your customers. So there's already billing information, there's already previous purchase information, and you've got quite a lot of information on me. The problem is you don't have that information tied into a cookie ID or a GU ID. And this time I use a very different email address. So my device is the same. I came from the same device, but my email is different and you cannot practically track me. So let's say there's an SDR who receives that information. They might go and look around if they have some contextual memory that this is the same person. But if you give that to an AI GTM system, it's going to reach out to me just like I'm a new person. Here comes the reconciliation part where data architecture and foundational mechanics are really important. That is why we always talk about enterprise AI being halted by the lack of foundation, by the lack of great architectural foundations. When it comes to the scenario that we were talking about, if there was a good connection with Google cookies and and GT and your Google Ads platform within the CRM, and the tracking was set in a way that if someone was coming in and they had a particular cookie ID that tracked back their previous sessions as well, now my different email address wouldn't matter because your AI GTM system would be able to pick me up and reach out to me as an existing customer and would try to make sure that there is enough context and convert that particular transactional thing that happened. So I submit a form. But if that AI GTM system is able to stitch together a particular context, it would be able to sell to me much better. This is a more complicated scenario. Let's have a very basic scenario. You need to do GTM for your MQ. Your CRM has enrichment enabled, but your CRM is not able to record meetings or have complete notes or have complete relational engagements. So you don't have company to contact and then company to company relationships established inside your system properly. What happens in such a case when the GTM system, if it's built on top of AI, is going to interact with such a person? What's going to happen is that it will lack the context and awareness to stitch together perfect outreach. How? Then again, the problem is AI has a specific context. AI has specific terms of engagement with a particular stack and with a particular action. So you actually are giving a particular skill set to the AI, to the agent. Once the agent is working off of those skill sets, it's going to engage in a knitted contextual layer. If your contextual layer isn't providing it enough data to create a good understanding of who the GTM system is going to reach out to, it's not going to work. So your MQL might have come in. If you don't have the right relational paradigm set up in your CRM, it's not going to work out well. This is the reason that I could sit down here and tell you that you need 10 AI systems today. And I build AI, I build products in AI, and Mountainise has been in AI production and AI enablement for a long time now. But the point I want to always convey is for you all to understand that AI is not a buzzword. It's not just something you look at and you go, we've got to have it in our system. And once it is within our system, it's going to do magic. Usually that's not the case. You have to have everything ready and then have the system work in favor of the AI and then have AI work in favor of your business. So it's a multi step process. Always tell people that your model, your agent, your AI is only as smart as the model that it is reading from. So AI is a tool. It is only as smart as the tool that it reads from. If you've got a CRM that has incorrect data, your AI enabled operations won't work. Your AI enabled marketing won't work. Your AI enabled audiences, your AI enabled outreach thing is going to work because the model that it is reading from is incorrect. If you've got fragmented data, that means output is guess, more of a guess dressed, that is, you have a guess that is just dressed up like an answer. And that does not work. I actually believe that if there is a lack in foundational context, the results are not going to be worth it. And that has happened to a lot of businesses out there that I've talked to, Mountainise has talked to. We've come in after they've actually deployed their AI previously with a partner or with or internally or however, and they don't see the results. There is no ROI. They're lacking good results. The outreach is happening in a very messy way. I saw this LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago. Someone received an email and a LinkedIn message. And the LinkedIn message said, "Hey, we do this. You are in this company. Would you want to buy a property in this particular city?" The man does not live in that city. That particular man does not work in that company. And that particular man does not have any of the information that was listed within that LinkedIn message. Big thing, they had an AI enabled system sending out those messages with context. So it wasn't just a personalized message, it was basically an AI generated message, which was built on top of a faulty system. That message gets you anything? I don't think so. So that's point one. Data architecture is really important. And big thing about data architecture is you have to understand. So before we even got to talking about the fact that we're going to be in this webinar or this podcast style webinar, my point was that we're going to look at how these things work out in the real world. So before anything, you need to understand how your data is structured. What is the schematic relationship? What is the schema? How do the relationships work? Where are one to one, one to many relationships? Do you have all the columns? Are you able to see your data tables? And within your data tables, are you able to understand what each field means? Are you able to see the lineage? So, modeling is the first part. You have to understand the data model first. You have to understand the data architecture that is within the systems that feed into an AI product or AI GTM operations system. Once you're able to look at all your data tables, all your data sources, and then create that snowflake, star, whatever schema, and think that, okay, this is how my data is architected, and this is the source of truth. This system tells me where data is coming from. So, right now on your screen is something that is still in a stealth mode. So, it will come out sometime in the future, and you'll be able to see it as a part of the Mountainise inventory. But this was built with one thought in mind, that the user should know when and where the data originates from. What is the source of truth? And this AI tool is structured to capture the essence of the system that it is running on. I spent a couple of months where I was banging my head against the wall while I was building this. And the problem was, as much refinement as I could pour into the AI enabled layers of the product, it would run into issues because the data behind the connection wasn't great. Wherever there are faults in the data, wherever there are missing linkages, there are missing relationships, your AI system won't be able to bridge those gaps because it does not have the ability to bridge the gaps that it does not have context for. So, 2 months, 2 months of me banging my head against the wall while building the product, I realized that an AI product should first assess if it is building onto a system that is actually worth it. So, what I built into our product at Mountainise and what we have built into all of our AI enabled services, agentic services as products, everything that we do with AI is an assessment, is a checklist. You'll get the checklist if you watch the webinar. So, you register on demand. You'll get the checklist as well that we use before we actually go on and do any AI enabled deployment or any agentic deployment. So, within my product as well, what I did, I was putting in checklists. So I asked my product to go in, and whenever there was a new integration or the connection, it would assess all the relationships, it would assess data quality, it would assess architectural quality, it would assess the system infrastructure. And if the system infrastructure passed certain thresholds, only then would it allow the system to connect elsewhere. It would actually ask the user to run the GTM analyst, which is basically a system analyst, which would look at all the system discrepancies and data discrepancies and architectural gaps and tell the user that those are the things that need to be fixed. The second biggest thing that we at Mountainise do is declaration of the system of record. We've got records in multiple systems. Every business has multiple systems. There's a CRM, there's an MVP, there's an ERP. But you have to decide, where is your system of record? What is going to be the source of truth? So you have to have a source of truth per object. What is your source of truth for a contact? What is your source of truth for the pipeline numbers? What is your source of truth for A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, so on? So source of truth has to be declared. That works in everything that we do. If you're onboarding someone to build an AI GTM system for them, the key element for an AI GTM system is a person, a lead, or a contact. And the second thing that matters is activity and engagement. So, those four objects, anytime we're engaging in an AI GTM system build, we're asking what the system of record for those four objects is. What is the source of truth? Where do we actually get the activity truth from, engagement truth from, and the demographic and informational truth from for those four objects? Once we're past that, there are less surprises. And then comes one big thing which people actually forgo more often than not. That's process orchestration. Is there a process? People think, a lot of businesses do, that bringing in AI is an alternative for process and process orchestration. That is not the case. You have to have a process. And AI is supposed to enhance that process. It's supposed to boost it, make it more productive, reduce the time, reduce friction, but it requires the process. It requires orchestration. So let's say you're doing GTM, you're sending out emails, scheduling meetings, creating tickets. But if all of that ends up in a queue and you don't know how to go about after the AI has generated its results, given that it does generate results without process, which I think pretty rare. If you don't have a process on how A to B to C to D works, then what are you going to tell the AI system to do? If you don't know how to move someone from a prospect to a marketing accepted lead to a marketing qualified lead and then to a sales qualified lead, how do you expect a GTM system that is built on top of an AI enabled agent to run that for you? There has to be a process orchestration layer. You need to understand that there is a process and you need to know for sure that process is going to work for you. You can have iterations, you can enhance it, organize it better, but process orchestration layer cannot suddenly vanish because now there's AI. Then comes one big thing, and that's governance. We're pretty big on governance. There are two separate branches in governance. We'll have to have a whole webinar, a whole podcast, a whole for governance with AI. AI can run rampant. AI can while businesses, there are several cases where we've seen businesses send out emails that trashed their senior reputation, that was so disconnected with the business model and with what they were trying to sell or what they were trying the people they sent those emails to see about them. It was so different what the GTM system did that it totally drowned their reputation. So do we need a governance layer? Do we need to oversee what an AI enabled system creates? That is a great question. I always believe, and Mountainise has advocated this to every client that wants AI enabled systems and AI GTM and AI RevOps, that you have to have balance between automation, AI enablement, and governance. There has to be someone who signs off on what AI is going to do. This makes AI shippable. It doesn't permanently slow it down, but it then makes it shippable because then you can trust what it's going to do. And if there is something that needs review, that needs to change, there is a governance module. There's a whole other governance module that exists on how much information it has access to, how much information it can disperse. That's a whole other webinar, and we'll talk about that in the future. But you have to have architecture, you have to have a system of record, you have to have process orchestration, and you have to have governance. And then, if all of that is set up, then you have to have a feedback loop. When I started to work in business technology years and years ago, I had to be told every few weeks what I was doing wrong and how I could do it better. And AI is very similar in nature or nurture or its coding or its context. If you have results, code results have to go back to the AI system and tell it that things are going well. Bad results have to go back to the system and tell it they are wrong and why are they wrong and what should be done better. So a very good example here would be we built a GTM system built on top of AI, an agentic layer that sent emails out to users that were in the nurture layer of the segments. So not the hottest leads, not the coldest, but in between. And what we did was we enabled a governance layer where everything would be created, sent into a channel for the SDR to review. And once they would click send, it would go and send those emails. But there was also one other option where they could iterate. They could re enter a prompt from Slack where they could tell the agent that you made this mistake, you misstated these numbers, or you misstated this context. You have to improve that. And that allows for a feedback loop. It makes the agent learn, it makes the AI system improve over time. It has to exist. Now, I've been talking about this again and again. We've been having these conversations on LinkedIn. I've tried to have two webinars now, podcast styled. Why? The reason is I always want businesses to make these decisions with a lot of context and with a lot of knowledge on how things work perfectly. Suggesting AI enablement to anyone and suggesting injections of AI agents and agentic systems is not a big deal. We could go in and tell everyone to build AI and agentic systems. But there is going to be a time when all of those who rushed to enable AI within their businesses without laying the foundation down are going to have problems. I don't want businesses to go down that route. I want businesses to understand that AI needs foundations. And if those foundations are laid down correctly, then it becomes a longer and long term game. Again, the whole goal of these webinars, the series on Beyond the Bot and what lies underneath, your system has to be correct. It is to tell you that you need to first set everything on the foundational level. You have to have data architecture connected. You have to have process orchestration. You have to have a system of record. You have to have governance on who approves, how it approves, and how it ships. And then you do need feedback loops. Once all of that ties in, you have an AI enablement pattern. You can build AI, you can enable it within your org, within different segments. You can have it in sales ops, mod ops, RevOps, dev, anywhere, product development, project management, product ownership. But there has to be an architecture layer. There has to be good data. There has to be a good data architecture. There has to be a system of records. There has to be correct process orchestration. There has to be governance, and there has to be a feedback loop. Now, the last thing here is going to be once you watch this webinar, you will get the checklist that Mountainise uses before we suggest that business is okay for a particular AI project. So if someone comes in, we need to do AI GTM, we'll do a CRM analysis, insights and engagements analysis, and we'll try to understand if everything is in place for it. If not, then we'll suggest a few fixes before that AI enablement can happen. So you get the checklist, you'll see how it works. And before you think of doing any AI enablement project at your business, think about it, go through that checklist and see if everything is in place, and then invest in AI. Investing in AI and agentic modules is awesome, but investing in correcting everything before you invest in AI, way better. And I'll meet you again soon, probably way sooner than you expect, and with a very similar topic. Maybe this time I'll pivot to something more on marketing side. I've been talking a lot of sales ops, RevOps, and how AI has to have those systems ready. Next time, maybe we talk about marketing and AI marketing and how you can prepare your marketing systems, your marketing operations, and your marketing processes in AI enablement and an AI enabled world. See you next time, and thank you for joining.